IQ scores around the world are falling. Not in one country, not in one generation, everywhere. And the data has been sitting in plain sight for decades. For most of the 20th century, every generation was measurably smarter than the one before it. Scientists called it the Flynn Effect, one of the most consistent findings in all of psychology. Then, somewhere around the 1990s, it stopped. And then it reversed. The question isn't whether humans are getting dumber. The data already answered that. The question is why, and what it means for you. Because this isn't a story about test scores. It's a story about what happens to a civilization when its most important asset starts going in the wrong direction. For almost 100 years, something remarkable was happening to the human mind. Every single decade, average IQ scores across the developed world rose by approximately 3 points. 3 points per decade, consistent, predictable. This was the Flynn Effect, named after philosopher James Flynn, who documented it in the 1980s. When he first published his findings, nobody believed him. The idea that humans were getting meaningfully smarter every generation seemed too convenient. But the data held. Researchers went back through military conscription records, school testing archives, psychological assessments spanning decades. Each generation was outperforming the last on measures of reasoning, pattern recognition, and problem solving. The explanations made sense. Better nutrition, wider access to education, more cognitively stimulating environments. The 20th century had built a machine for producing smarter humans, and it worked for a while. So what changed? Why did one of the most consistent trends in the history of human psychology suddenly go into reverse? And why has almost nobody heard about it? The first signs appeared in Norway. Researchers analyzing military IQ test data from hundreds of thousands of conscripts noticed something that didn't fit. The scores that had been climbing for generations had plateaued. Then they started dropping. The findings were published in 2004. Researchers assumed it was a local anomaly. It wasn't. Similar results emerged from Denmark, then Finland, then France, then the United Kingdom. The reverse Flynn effect was not a regional fluke. It was a pattern. Whatever is driving the decline is moving faster than whatever drove the rise. If you have watched our episode on what it actually costs to be the smartest person in the room, you already know high intelligence comes with its own complications. But what we are talking about now is different. Not the burden of being smart, the disappearance of the baseline itself. So what is driving this? The answer involves 4 separate forces, and only one of them is the one you're probably already thinking of. The easy answer is screens. And yes, chronic screen exposure and the collapse of deep reading do appear in the research. But screens are not the whole story, not even close. The first factor is nutrition. Cognitive development in early childhood is extraordinarily sensitive to micronutrient availability: iodine, fatty acids, iron, zinc. The problem in wealthy countries is not caloric scarcity, it is nutritional hollowness. Processed food has displaced nutrient-dense food at precisely the stages where the developing brain needs them most. The second factor is education. Modern systems have shifted away from abstract reasoning and critical thinking toward rote memorization, standardized testing, and passive absorption. We built systems optimized for producing test passers, not thinkers. The third factor is cognitive offloading. This is the one that should concern you most. Cognitive offloading is the process by which humans delegate mental tasks to external tools, calculators, GPS, search engines, and increasingly artificial intelligence. The brain, like any muscle, develops through use and atrophies through disuse. When you no longer need to remember directions because your phone does it, your spatial memory weakens. When you no longer perform mental arithmetic, your numerical reasoning atrophies. We are not just using tools. We are outsourcing the cognitive processes that built human intelligence in the first place. And the fourth factor is the collapse of deep reading. There is a specific cognitive workout that only sustained linear reading provides, one that builds capacity for complex reasoning and abstract thought. Screen-based consumption, fragmented and algorithmically optimized for dopamine, does not provide this, and we have abandoned deep reading at a scale with no historical precedent. Each of these 4 forces compounds the others. Poor nutrition impairs the developing brain. Weakened education fails to build reasoning capacity. Cognitive offloading atrophies what capacity was built. The collapse of deep reading removes the last exercise for sustained abstract thought. Together they form a system, and the system is working exactly as you would expect. Here is where this stops being academic and becomes personal. The decline we are describing is not happening to some other generation in some other country. It is happening now to your generation, possibly to you. Adult cognitive capacity is plastic, meaning it changes based on how it is or isn't used. Every time you reach for your phone to answer a question your brain could have worked through, you are making a withdrawal from a cognitive account with a finite balance. Think about the last time you were genuinely bored with no device to reach for. Think about the last time you read something longer than a few paragraphs without losing focus. Think about the last time you navigated somewhere without GPS. These are not nostalgic observations, they are diagnostic questions. And the most uncomfortable implication, the people most affected by cognitive decline are statistically the least likely to notice it. Metacognition, the ability to accurately assess your own thinking, is itself a higher-order cognitive function. As that function weakens, so does your ability to detect that it is weakening. You cannot feel your IQ dropping. You cannot sense your attention span contracting. You cannot perceive your capacity for abstract reasoning diminishing in real time. The decline is invisible from the inside, which is exactly what makes it dangerous. If this is the kind of thinking you want more of, make sure you are subscribed. There is a lot more coming. So what do you actually do with this? The answer is not simply read more books or put your phone down. Those are real recommendations, but they're not reframes, and without a reframe, they will not stick. The reframe is this: your brain is not a fixed asset, it is infrastructure, and like all infrastructure, it requires active maintenance. The question is not whether you're smart enough. The question is whether you're maintaining the infrastructure that makes sustained thinking possible. The research points to 4 specific interventions with documented cognitive benefits. Sustained reading of complex long-form text that demands extended concentration. Regular exposure to novel problems that cannot be solved by searching for the answer. Physical exercise, which has some of the strongest documented effects on cognitive function of any studied intervention. And deliberate reduction of cognitive offloading, choosing to remember, navigate, and calculate without assistance. Not because tools are bad, because the exercise matters. Cognitive capacity is not something you have, it is something you do every day. Through the choices you make about how your mind spends its time. The Flynn Effect proved that human intelligence can rise across an entire civilization within generations. That means the reverse Flynn Effect can be reversed too. The trajectory is not fixed, but it will not reverse on its own. Every generation worries the one after it is getting softer, less capable. That concern is usually wrong. This time the data suggests it might not be. IQ scores are falling. The reasons are documented, measurable, and not inevitable. The forces driving cognitive decline are human-made systems, and human-made systems can be changed, but only by people who can see them clearly enough to choose differently. The question this episode leaves you with is not whether humanity is getting dumber, the evidence on that is already in. The question is whether you are going to do anything about your own trajectory, because that part, unlike the Flynn Effect, is still entirely up to you. But here is what makes that question harder than it sounds. If your decisions are already shaped by forces you cannot see, if your choices are not entirely your own, then what does it even mean to choose differently? That is exactly what we explore next. Subscribe to Kairos. Think sharper, know faster.